All right, welcome. We're about to dive into something pretty incredible, the most complex machine known to exist, your mind. We're going to explore the why behind literally everything you think, feel, and do. And I mean, have you ever just stopped and wondered, why? Why do you do the things you do? Like, why that breakfast this morning? Or why do you suddenly get a burst of energy or feel a wave of sadness come over you for what feels like no reason? It's a question everyone asks, right? And that's exactly what we're getting into. Well, that's where psychology comes in. And look, it's not just a bunch of boring theories or stuffy lab coats. It's actually a map, a practical guide to understanding that amazing and sometimes confusing machine inside your head. So you ready? Let's dive in. All right, first up, let's take a tour of your inner world. We're talking about the hidden architecture of your thoughts and feelings, all those unseen forces that are basically running the show. Okay, so this is one of the biggest ideas in all of psychology, and it's a great way to picture your mind. Think of it like an iceberg. Everything you're aware of right now, listening to me, thinking about your dinner plans, that's your conscious mind. That's just the tiny tip of the iceberg sticking out of the water. But underneath? Whoa, that's the subconscious. It's this massive, hidden part full of memories, beliefs, and drives that are powerfully shaping your actions, and you're not even aware of it most of the time. So where do our thoughts even come from? It's a good question. They don't just pop out of nowhere. It's more like they're a collage, right? They're fueled by your memories. They're directed by whatever you're paying attention to. And they're constantly shaped and reshaped by everything you've ever experienced. And what about feelings, emotions? It's so easy to think of them as just messy or irrational, right? But they're not. They're actually super fast data reports. Think about it. Fear is just a report saying, hey, potential threat here. And happiness is a report saying, yep, needs are being met. They're basically essential signals that help you navigate the world. So the real skill here is learning how to read those reports. And that, my friends, is what we call emotional intelligence, or EQ. It's not about ignoring your emotions. It's about understanding them, using them to handle stress better, to communicate with people, and honestly, to just make better decisions in life. Okay, so we've looked at the inner world. Now, let's shift gears and talk about our outer expression. How do we actually show up in the social world and interact with other people? And a really simple way to think about this is to ask yourself, where do you get your energy? Do you feel totally recharged after a big party with lots of people? Or do you need some quiet time alone to get your battery back to full? That's really the core difference between an extrovert who gets energized by being social and an introvert who recharges in solitude. But of course, personality is way more than just that one thing. It's super complex. So a lot of psychologists use this model called the Big Five to break it down. You can kind of think of these as the 5 main ingredients in the recipe that makes you, well, you. First up, we've got openness. This is basically how curious and adventurous you are. If you're high in openness, you love new ideas. You're creative, you're always trying new things. If you're lower on the scale, you probably find more comfort in things that are familiar. Number 2 is conscientiousness. This is all about how organized and disciplined you are. Are you the type of person with a color-coded calendar and a to-do list for your to-do lists? That's high conscientiousness. Or are you more of a go-with-the-flow, spontaneous person? That's on the lower end. Third, we have extroversion. And this goes right back to that energy question. It's about how outgoing and social you are. High extroversion means you love being the life of the party. Low extroversion, what we call introversion, means you're probably more comfortable with a good book or just a couple of close friends. Next, at number 4, is agreeableness. This one's pretty straightforward. It's how cooperative and compassionate you tend to be. If you're high in agreeableness, you're probably trusting and a real team player. A lower score might mean you're a bit more competitive or skeptical of others. And last but not least, number 5 is neuroticism. Now, this sounds like a scary word, but it's really about your emotional stability and how sensitive you are to stress. If you're high in neuroticism, you might feel anxious or stressed out more easily. If you're low on the scale, you tend to be more resilient and stay calm under pressure. But here's the thing. No matter what your personal recipe is, we are all social creatures. We can't escape it. We are so influenced by the people around us. And that's what social psychology is all about. It shows us how powerful our desire to fit in really is. And that desire can drive our behavior in some pretty wild ways, for better and for worse. Okay, so we've looked at the inner world and the outer social world. For this last part, let's get practical. Let's build a toolkit that you can actually use in your day-to-day life. But before we do that, we gotta bust some myths. I'm sure you've heard this one 1,000 times, right? We only use 10% of our brains. The idea that we're all just walking around with all this untapped potential just sitting there. Yeah, no, it's a total myth. It sounds cool, but it's completely false. Here's the deal. Brain scans show we use pretty much our entire brain, just not all at once. Different parts light up for different tasks. And hey, while we're busting myths, that whole I'm a visual learner or I'm an auditory learner thing, not really supported by science. And sorry, but playing Mozart for your unborn baby isn't going to turn them into a genius. This is what psychology is great for, helping us separate what's real from what just sounds good. So if we can't magically unlock the other 90% of our brain, what can we do? Well, the answer is actually way more practical and honestly more effective. We can use real, science-backed psychology to actually improve our mental well-being. And it can be as simple as building 3 powerful habits. First, get to know your stress. Figure out what your personal triggers are. Second, find healthy ways to cope. I'm talking about things like mindfulness, exercise, or just losing yourself in a hobby you love. And third, maybe the most important, build a routine that puts sleep first. Seriously, these aren't magic tricks. They're just the fundamental building blocks for a healthy mind. Look, we've really only just skimmed the surface today. This map of the human mind is huge, but the key takeaway is that this isn't just some abstract school lesson. It's a toolkit for you, for understanding yourself better. So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you've got the basics of the map, what part of yourself are you going to go explore first?